So, despite Muslim caricatures that early Islam was a time of great unity and brotherhood, in reality, following Muhammad's death by poisoning, we see one of the most tumultuous times within Islamic history as a whole. Why? Well, the region was in total chaos ever since his death. First of all, you had those who weren't very keen on the idea of following a mere successor of a prophet, that being Abu Bakr, the first caliph, rather than the prophet himself. They said that their allegiance to Islam lived and died with Muhammad, and now that he was gone, they were no longer bound. Second of all, in addition to that, you also had people who simply saw it as an opportunity to reassert their dominance within the Arabian Peninsula. Maybe they had just succumbed to the jizya or didn't want to really commit themselves to Islam in that way. And so now that Muhammad was gone, they saw it as their opportunity to also rise up again. And then third, you also had those who maybe were more or less committed, but actually proclaimed themselves to be prophets of Islam. So thereby overruling Muhammad, actually calling for the allegiance of the then Muslims to them instead. And so, needless to say, calling it a three-ring circus was an understatement. It was total chaos. Now, as I said, Abu Bakr, the first caliph, recognized that his control over the peninsula was bursting at the seams. And so he sprung into action. Was he going to win them over again by using very convincing apologetics or lovingly praying for them? No, Muhammad had already given him the answer. Whoever changed his Islamic religion, kill him. And if that weren't enough, he gave very specific instructions to his men as well. Among Abu Bakr's instructions to his armies was this: when you come upon one of the people's abodes and then hear the call to prayer in it, desist from its people until you have asked them for what reason they were hostile. But if you do not hear the call to prayer, then launch a rage such that you kill and burn. Now, regaining control over the peninsula would be no small task, and so in order to accomplish this, Abu Bakr sent his best general at the time, a man by the name of Khalid ibn al-Walid. I might have butchered that, but forgive me. Anyways, Khalid was given very specific instructions, as I said earlier, regarding what to do with these people who were rebelling against Islam and rebelling against Muhammad and Allah, so to speak. And Abu Bakr thought he could count on Khalid to fulfill these orders. Now, did he? Well, let's read and find out. Forgive me if I butchered these Arabic terms and names, but here goes. Then the cavalry brought Malik bin Urayra to Khalid, along with some other people. The raiding party disagreed about them. Among them was Abu Qatada, who was one of those who testified that they had made the call to prayer and the Iqamah and had performed the prayer. So in other words, they were Muslims. So when they disagreed about them, Khalid ordered that they be locked up on a cold night against which nothing was sufficient for warmth. The night began to get colder, so Khalid ordered a crier to call out, "Keep your captives warm." Now in the Kinana dialect, when one says, "Adfi'u al-rajul," it means keep him warm or wrap him up. But in the dialects of others, it means kill him. So the people thought, since the word meant kill in their dialect, that he wanted them killed, so they did so. Dirar bi al-Azwar killed Malik. Khalid heard the outcry, so he went out after they had finished with them, whereupon he said, "If God desires something, he effects it." So, according to Tabari, although Malik being beheaded was just a matter of alleged miscommunication, Khalid's reaction was one of complete indifference and just mere surrender to the process, despite the fact that Malik was now technically considered a Muslim. And on top of that, what did Khalid now do in response to the situation following his beheading? He took Malik's wife for himself. Khalid married Tamim bint al-Minhal and abstained from her so that the period between her menstruations should elapse. Now, what was Abu Bakr's response to all of this? Now, the Arabs used to find the taking of women abhorrent in war and condemn it. Umar said to Abu Bakr, "In the sword of Khalid, there really is forbidden behavior. And even if this story about Malik's execution were not true, it is necessary for you to take retaliation on him." He pestered him about that, but Abu Bakr did not take retaliation on any of his tax agents or commanders. Then he said, "Tell me, Umar, Khalid sought to clear something up, but in the process made a mistake. So stop berating him." Abu Bakr paid the blood price for Malik and wrote to Khalid to come before him. So he did that to explain his story, whereupon Abu Bakr pardoned him and accepted his explanation. But Abu Bakr did censure him over his marriage to one whom the Arabs considered it disgraceful to marry in that way. Umar pressed him to dismiss Khalid, saying, "In his sword there really is forbidden behavior." Whereupon he replied, "O Umar, I will not sheath a sword that God has drawn against the unbelievers." Well, so much for standing on principle. But in spite of Abu Bakr's willingness to pardon Khalid, Umar, who would actually go on to be the third caliph, was furious by this and told Khalid that he would stone him for killing another Muslim man and then taking his wife. Now, again, this is a little ironic here. There's a touch of some deja vu, because where else do we see a Muslim taking the wife of another Muslim? Well, none other than Muhammad taking the wife of his adopted son, once his adopted son found out that Muhammad was lusting after her. And so it sounds like Umar really has an issue with Muhammad himself. Khalid is just following the example. Regardless, this would be the start of bitter tension that would be festering between Khalid and Umar, and this next and final example that we'll see will only push this even further. So look, in spite of Khalid's antics, there's no denying that he was a successful general. In fact, just from a purely neutral standpoint, I mean, he was one of the most successful generals in history when you think about all the territory they conquered. And Abu Bakr knew this, and so it would be wise to just throw him out. He needed him to put down the rest of the rebellions within the peninsula. And so his next assignment was to go after a man by the name of Musaylima. And he was someone who, as I said earlier, proclaimed himself to be a prophet. And so he had to be put down. Khalid was successful in putting down the rebellion, as well as all of the rebellions as a whole within the region. Now, Abu Bakr had some very specific instructions, though, for Khalid regarding the Banu Hanifa tribe, which was a tribe that had actually backed Musaylima during his rebellion. Let's see what the instructions were, as well as how Khalid responded. Now, Abu Bakr had sent Salama bi Waqsh with a letter to Khalid, ordering him, if God had given him victory, to execute everyone of Banu Hanifa over whose face a razor had passed. So he arrived, but found that Khalid concluded a truce with them. Now, if all that weren't enough, it looks like Khalid wasn't even satisfied with just Malik's wife either, if you remember her from earlier. So what did he do now? Then Khalid said to Muja'ah, who was one of the Banu Hanifa chieftains, "Give me your daughter in marriage." At this, Muja'ad said to him, "Take your time. You are destroying my reputation, and with mine, yours in the eyes of your leader." But Khalid said, "Marry her to me, man." So he did. News of that reached Abu Bakr, whereupon he wrote him a blood-curdling letter. "Upon my life, O son of Khalid's mother, are you so free as to marry women, while in the court of your house is the blood of 1,200 men of the Muslims that is not yet dried?" When Khalid looked into the letter, he began to say, "This is the work of that little left-handed man." From the jump, it wouldn't be a stretch to assume that for many, Islam was merely a means to an end, rather than a genuine love and devotion to Allah. After all, Khalid, being the top commander during the golden age of Islam, prioritized women over his God when push came to shove. And who can blame him when the purpose is to make it to paradise where you can have sex with virgins for eternity? Allah promised it, Muhammad promoted it, and Khalid exemplified this mentality and this attitude. Khalid is not a bad apple of Islam. Rather, he is a very model of the seed itself, the seed of the religion, of the ideology itself.